was Crew.
Wait.
I mean, you could listen to my information. From every
DK was Crew.
Wait, Ant, you won? Let's go! I was part of that team.
Oh my god.
Wait, that counts on Among Us Academy.
Oh my god.
That's for sure.
Get fucked, guys. Well, you never thought you'd see the day.
Hey guys, it's Bait, and I'm here to bring you another morning lobby stats video backed by popular demand. I was unsure as to whether or not to include stats for all the morning lobby games since 2022 or just focus on 2024 ones. And so I did a poll, and democracy has spoken. Seems like the vast majority of people want to see who's doing best in the latest year, 2024 only. For those keeping track at home, there have been 309 games played in the morning lobby in 2024. It's interesting to see the lobby overall win rates this year. You'll notice imposters stay roughly the same at 21%, and crew have gotten a bit worse, averaging 48% of wins, probably because there are more neutral killers, and the neutral killers are getting better. They've jumped up from 12.3% to a 16.5% win rate, and the median win rate for neutrals, so jesters and Xyz, have basically stayed the same. Now let's look into the frequency stats. Firstly, how often people show up to play in the morning lobby this year. So who actually shows up to play Among Us the most in the morning lobby this year? Well, first is Dumdog. He's only missed 1 week of lobbies. Then there's Ifer and Junk, who are very consistent as well, as is Steve. Yeah, can't believe he's top 5. He's still Mr. Among Us. And Kara is super keen on the morning lobby as well. Then we have 5UP and then Hafu. Interestingly enough, you have at the bottom Platypus, but he's played a lot in recent months. So I'm sure, going forward, he's going to be a lot higher in these stats. People love complaining that they're unlucky, they never get certain roles, they never get imposter. Well, it looks like Dumdog has every right to complain. He's got an imposter less than 10% of the time this year in 2024, whereas someone like Junk gets it over 20% of the time. So you can pause here, have a look at your player and how often they get a different role. Here are some stats that Lisa has actually compiled and provided to us to share with everyone. They include stats for who has the most kills and who has the most deaths. So people like to ask, who gets the most kills as imposters? Well, it's Platy this year, without a doubt. And then next is, I guess, Antfrost and Ifer. If you ever watch Ifer's stream, he loves to kill. Likewise, DK as well, averaging 2.1 kills as imposter per game. At the other end, you have people like S Major, who I guess takes a more passive approach. If you ever watch him play, he likes to marinate people as imposter. And then you have Habam and Skarj, who take a more passive line. 5UP is also, I guess, a really big fan of marination. And Steve, he loves to kill, but I think he just gets caught early on. And so he doesn't get as many rounds to kill as imposter, hence his average is lower. Next, we have getting killed round 1 frequency. So interestingly enough, again, S Major doesn't get killed round 1 because I think if you watch his streams, he really likes sticking with people in round 1. So he rarely ever gets killed, only 6% of the time. Whereas Skarj likes to go off by himself, and then Steve as well, Junk, they wander off, do their own things, which make them, I guess, a little bit easier to snipe for a round 1 kill. Pause here and let me know if there's anything that you find interesting at all. And note that the little grey bars actually show the number of times you sheriff misfire round 1 and kill yourself. And you can see that Dumdog actually has a lot of sheriff misfires, as does Steve, Baycon as well, as does Overly and DK and Kimmy. So basically the people that you would sort of expect who fire the most round 1 sheriff and misfire the most round 1 actually have that shown up on this graph as well. So we talked about people who are most likely to die round 1. What about dying before the end of the game and getting killed? Who's most likely to have that happen to them? Well, it looks like S Major and Kara get targeted a lot. So perhaps that explains why S Major's super cautious round 1, because he dies a lot later in the game. Then you have Skarj, Platy, Janet, Junk, and Cortilli. There's a bit of a trend there. Aren't they all Junk lobby regulars? Okay, I don't know what to make of that. Maybe, I mean, hopefully they're not being targeted. Maybe they just play the game in more remote locations, so they die a little bit easily. But that's an interesting correlation there. And then the people with the strongest plot armor, well, that's the likes of Steve, Koji, Hafu. Kimmy doesn't get killed a lot. That's interesting. Baycon, and then DK rarely gets killed. DK has a lot of plot armor, it seems. He does get shielded a lot, I will say. A lot of people like shielding DK. But then again, a lot of people like shielding Dumdog as well. and he's about middle of the pack in terms of kill frequency. I guess Dumdog gets shielded a lot, but people want to kill him a lot because he often knows the answer, whereas DK gets shielded a lot and he doesn't get targeted as much. Probably can explain why DK gets killed the least. So a lot of people have been asking about guessing stats. Who guesses correctly the most per game? Who guesses incorrectly the most per game? And I just want to caveat this by saying a lot of people just YOLO guess when they're being voted out. So take all these stats with a huge pinch of salt. This graph includes guesses as both an imposter as well as a neutral killer. And the things that jump out is that Cortilli is really good. So half the time she has a guessing ability. She manages to snipe someone. That is really impressive. S Major is also really good at his assassination skills, as is Koji and DK and Platty and Hafu. Baycon's probably a bit of a sample size thing there, but isn't doing too badly. Whereas on the other side, I think her bomb has never guessed anyone correctly. And Steve has a couple, but probably guesses a lot more incorrectly, as does her bomb. But you see one huge outlier in the middle, and I think that's Scarge. I think he's really smart. He understands the fundamental of the game, but he just makes some real YOLO guesses, just completely unprovoked. And anyone who watches the morning lobby for any amount of time will see Scarge randomly blowing up. I hope you enjoyed those niche stats. Now let's talk about overall imposter win rates, and we'll see if they actually are related to, for example, the number of correct guesses per game people have, or the kills per game a player has. Does that have any relation to their win rate as imposter?
What the fuck is this? Does this say that I haven't won a single... No. No, that can't be real. I've won. Hey, no one else watched this from the lobby, right? No one else knows about this, right? It's just us?
Oh, here's a fun statistic somebody put in my chat. Steve's apparently over 25 in imposter games in 2024.
I was wondering when that would get brought up again.
Yep.
That's really
this is gonna
impressive
be
that
my
you
day,
haven't
though.
accidentally won one of those.
It's surprising, right? Yeah,
25?
Yeah.
people look to me as the best player.
I mean, that's what I've always thought.
The fall from the
Let's laugh
champion
about
spot is crazy.
Steve. How the mighty have fallen indeed. Basically, last now, with only 2 imposter wins this year out of 45 possible opportunities. So Mr. Pro Second Amendment responsible gun owner Steve Suptic has an average of 1.7 kills per game. Correct guesses about 0.09 per game, and incorrect guesses a bit higher, 0.33 per game.
And if you count the stats and you took out this year, he's actually doing really well. It just seems like he's thrown in the towel and isn't trying that much in Among Us this year, which is...
I am! Well, I've been playing Idol Slayer, but I still am. When it's imposter time, I'm trying. I swear to God, I'm trying.
We're playing Imposter.
All right, Steve, whatever you say. You've obviously done better. So in the last 20 games, you've won 2 of them, which is infinitely better than you were doing before. So here's to having some more good imposter games, mate. Next is Scarge, who, for the record, I feel is one of the best killers in the game. He just doesn't take the game that seriously, and he just guesses for the fun of it a lot. So 52% of the time, he dies when he's an imposter because he misfires on himself. Like, sure, some percentage of that time he's been voted out already, but just put that into perspective. So half the games, he's dead because he misfired. And the other time, well, I guess he gets caught and voted out or killed by the sheriff. So he's only won 2 imposter games, same as Steve, but he's had less opportunities for a 6.9% imposter win rate.
Oh, unless Junkin... No,
This is what happens when I get out first, man.
Button, bro.
Yeah.
So sorry, Hapu, that you had to
No way Bacon wins, right?
deal with that.
That's tough. That's tough that
Wait, do I have
that
more
way,
imposter
yeah.
wins than Steve now? Is that what...
Dude, you actually might. That's so funny.
At that time, it was actually true. Bacon had 2 to Steve's 1 imposter win. Now they're tied at 2, but because Bacon has played less games, his imposter win rate's a bit better at 7.14%. Next in 16th is Cortilli. This goes to show why these stats don't have any significant meaning other than a bit of fun trivia, because Cortilli is definitely one of the top 5 imposters, I think. She gets unfairly sussed a lot, and she just doesn't push back. She has gone on record saying she plays in the Hafu lobby to make new friends, and she definitely has achieved that. She'll be sorely missed, and she was one of the best imposters. She guessed right 0.47 times per game. That's the lobby highest. She was absolutely cracked, as is the next player. And that's Kara. She's an interesting one because she has a 10% imposter win rate, which is much lower than she deserves. She has great technical knowledge of the game, but I'm scratching my head why she's still so low this year as well. And I think part of it is because people are keen to vote her out when she's a killer. So out of all the times that she gets voted out, 77% of the time it's a correct vote. That's the highest in the lobby. So people are just onto it when she's the killer and they're pretty happy to vote her out. I think that's the cause of her downfall. Next in 14th is Scott, or S Major. Bit of a sample size issue, but he's won 1 out of 9 imposter games for an 11% imposter win rate. In 13th is actually Kimmy. She's doing pretty well. I have a sinking suspicion she's doing better than she was before because she isn't streaming and she's not distracted. Like she's playing, I guess, a little bit less for content. And yeah, her focus shows. She's getting above average kills per game, better guesses correctly per game, and less incorrect guesses per game than average. So she's doing pretty well in the middle of the pack. Then you have my man Koji, who's winning 18.7% of his imposter games, 6 out of 32 games won. That's pretty impressive in 2024. And he's actually a pretty ruthless killer, killing 1.9 kills per game, and does better than average in both correct guesses and incorrect guesses. I think Janet is going through similar things to what Steve's going through this year. She's a little bit distracted when she plays Among Us, but she still lets her fundamentals show. She's won 6 out of 30 imposter games, so 20%, but she definitely was doing a lot better before this year. Roughly average amount of kills per game and correct guesses per game, and she's not as trigger happy to guess incorrectly towards the end. So Junkyard has been absolutely killing it this year. He has an above average imposter win rate that's good for 10th in the lobby. In fact, he has more imposter wins at 13 than the rest of the Junk lobby combined. That's Cortilli, Kara, Scarge, and Platty combined only have 12 imposter wins in 2024. So good on you, old man. Next, in 9th place, we have another Minecraft streamer, and that's Habom. He's won 3 out of his 13 imposter games this year for an above average imposter win rate. Of note, he hasn't had a single correct guess yet in 2024. Hopefully that will change soon. Next is my man DK. He has been sharp in 2024 with 8 imposter wins out of 32 opportunities. He's killing a lot, so he's no slouch with 2.1 kills per game. He's getting a lot of correct guesses as well at 0.29 per game. So he's definitely doing a lot better than in previous years. Tied in 6th place is 5UP, and someone that sounds a lot like 5UP according to Steve, and that's Anfrost. So 5UP has 10 imposter wins out of 38 opportunities for 26.3 imposter win rate this year. He's slightly more marinating in his kills, but he does above average in correct guesses and incorrect guesses per game. Anfrost is also doing equally as well, winning 5 out of his 19 opportunities. He's become a semi-regular in the morning lobby this year, and I'm glad that he's making himself at home, with Impostor at least. Next we have Overly, who's ranked 5th in the lobby with a 27.59% imposter win rate. She just gets the job done. Really professional. In 4th place, we have a new face in the lobby, A Platypus, aka Mr. Mango Time himself. He has a batting average of 30.77%, which is really impressive. He is also the most ruthless killer in the lobby with 2.4 kills per game as imposter for the lobby highest. He is also really keen on using both correct guesses and incorrect guesses. No wonder he's pushing for them to introduce multiple guesses per meeting. In 3rd place, we have Dumb Dog. No surprises here. He's just really good. He's better than average in his imposter win rate. He kills more than average. He guesses correctly more than average. He incorrectly guesses better than average. So overall, I really enjoy watching Dumb Dog play. I think he has a really good balance between trying hard, playing for content, playing somewhat strategic, but with, you know, the lobby in mind. Yeah, I think he's a fantastic host, and he also plays really well as imposter. Ifa being second just goes to show that just being a ruthless killer can get you places. Maybe it's the Valorant training in him, but he just loves to headshot other players in Among Us. He has an above average kill count per game, but his actual guesses are a bit to be desired, but goes to show that you don't have to be really good at guessing to actually win the game. Being able to manipulate the meetings and getting the people you want voted out is just as important to imposter gameplay. So who does that leave? Well, the queen herself, Hafu. She plays really well. She has a really high imposter win rate at 38.3%, 17.3% better than average. Just to put that into perspective, you know, people like Steve have played more games than her and only have 2 imposter wins. She has 18. She kills a lot every game as well, so she's no slouch there. And she uses the guess ability to its full potential. She has above average correct guesses, and she seldom incorrectly guesses. I think she also lets other people vote her out if she's being voted out a lot, which I sort of like. She doesn't fall on her sword by guessing her way out yellow a lot. Or maybe it's Hafu good because she gets imposter a lot. Maybe Dumdog is a bit rusty. He'd do better if he got imposter more. I just thought this was a fun fact that Dumdog has basically half the imposter wins Hafu does, despite having played 50 more games than she has. So it really goes to show the imposter frequency and how that affects how many imposter chances players have. So here is the overall imposter win rates ranked in 2024. So leave a comment if there's something here that interests you or is surprising. I think Hafu being number 1 isn't that much of a surprise. I know she thinks Dumdog is doing really well, but Dumdog gets voted out in meetings a fair amount more than she does, I think. And then you have Ifa, which is a little bit surprising, but he has really strong killer instincts, maybe to the detriment of his crew game, potentially. Vibeup's actually doing a lot better this year than he has in previous years, as is DK. And then you have people who are struggling this year for the likes. I mean, the best case example is Steve. So hopefully he can continue to turn it around. It's interesting when you look at neutral killer average kills, you'll see that S Major goes from a really slow imposter killer to being really brazen as a neutral killer. And likewise, Ifa is still very gung-ho as a neutral killer. So then you can actually combine them all into average kills per game where you're either an imposter, neutral killer, or sheriff at some point. And you'll see that Ifa is, not shy with gun control at all. This graph is pretty interesting. It shows in red the number of times a player as a killer gets voted out. So in descending order. But the gray bars show the number of times that they guess incorrectly. Now, for a lot of players who aren't named Steve Subtic, a lot of times they guess incorrectly because they are going to be voted out. So I guess the total of the red and the gray bar shows how many times a killer is eliminated during a meeting. So you can see that Hafu gets voted out quite a lot, 24% of times. But in terms of actually getting eliminated in a meeting, it's the lowest out of everyone, except S Major, a bit of sample size issues there. Whereas you have players like Scarge and Habom and DK who basically refuse to be voted out and they would rather die on their own sword and guess incorrectly as their way to be eliminated. With that in mind, do you know who the top neutral killer is? You can put your predictions in. While you do that, I'll just remind everyone on the overall neutral killer win rate in 2024, it's 16.5%, which again was better than it has been in previous years. And it's a lot more even. So Glitch, about 14.6% win rate, Jug 16.67%, Arsonist is still the best at 20.4%, and Pesty Plaguebearer have a 13.92% win rate. Given, I guess, a sample size issue, these stats probably mean even less than the imposter stats. But to the surprise of probably not that many people, Hafu is number 1 again. She has a lot of neutral killer games under her belt, and she is doing really well at it. She's killing it, you could say. I'm sorry, Kara, you're no longer the top neutral killer, but you're doing really well still. But Hafu is just really balanced. She's won 4 games as the Glitch this year in 2024. 5 games as an Arsonist, 1 game as a Pesty. That's absolutely incredible. And remember, these games are when she's a solo killer and she has no one else to carry her. So, very good job. I mean, she tops the most Glitch wins out of everyone in the lobby, the most Arsonist wins out of everyone in the lobby. But it's interesting how everyone struggles to win as Juggernaut except Dumdog. I think he really understands the nuance in the role. He has 3 Jug wins this year. And my man Koji has the most pesty wins this year as well, with 2. Now let's talk about this interesting chart. To make sense of it, think of you being the crew in this position. How often do you vote out a different player accurately? So when they're either imposter or neutral killer. And so what's not pictured here is when they're another crew, which you don't want to vote out, or when they're a neutral or an exi target. So like a jester, for example. And so Kara actually gets voted out accurately a lot. So when she gets voted out, she has the least reason to be salty because often it's a correct vote. Whereas people like Bomb, DK, and S Major often are voted out incorrectly. Same thing with Koji. He gets voted out as a killer. Out of all the times he's voted out, he's the killer only 43% of the time. But then again, that's maybe why he gets so many Jester wins. So it's a blessing and a curse. This year, it's still easier to be Jester, winning about 19.86% of the time. And Executioner actually does a little bit better this year as well, winning 13.48% of the time. So who thrives the most of these neutrals that have meeting win conditions? Well, it's Platty. But then again, a little bit of a sample size issue there. And Frost is doing really well. And then you have Dumb and Dumber. Steve and DK, they excel in these neutral type roles, whereas you have people like Hafu who do really well at other roles, struggle a little bit in these sort of meeting manipulation roles. So here is the breakdown. Platty is 100% because he's won 2 out of 2 games. So I imagine he's going to revert back to the mean the more he plays in this lobby. But Koji is doing really cracked as the Jester, winning 4 games. And interestingly enough, 5UP is actually not doing too bad with 3 Jester wins in 2024 alone. With XE, you find that these players are very convincing in meetings. So you have Kara, Hafu, and 5UP. So really strong crew, which I think enables them to direct the attention of everyone else, whereas Jester has a much different skill set. But good on 5UP for being good at both. So who's the most crew AF in the lobby in 2024? Let's find out. Seems like a lot of people wanted the sheriff stats, so let's include them, again, courtesy of Lisa. So here's the graph I think a lot of people will find interesting. It's the average number of kills and average number of misses as sheriff per game. So you have Dumdog, who actually is the most accurate in the sense that he gets the most kills correctly as sheriff per game. But he also misfires the most as sheriff each game. So he's basically feast or famine. So that's Mr. Please Don't Sheriff Round 1 himself. He gets a lot of it right and a lot of it wrong. Whereas I guess you have more responsible gun owners like Kara, who gets it right 0.21 times as sheriff. If you ever watch her stream, she like knows when someone's bad and she hunts him down as imitator or sheriff. And Kara only misfires 0.1 kills per game as sheriff or imitator. Then you have people who are just a little bit more reckless. So they include Scarge, Steve, Overly, Baycon, Kimmy, Habom, and Frost. And I guess that list, especially Steve, doesn't really surprise me. You also see, for example, 5UP is pretty judicial with using his sheriff ability. Same with Ifa. And then you have Hafu, who doesn't really use it that much, but, you know, has equal numbers roughly of guessing correctly as well as incorrectly.
If he did a statistics in a graph for correct guesses in those lobbies, like if I'm saying, hey, this is the bad person, please vote with me, or don't vote me, vote the bad person, I think I'd be at the very top of that list. But because I have no influence to sway the vote, that's why I lose a lot. Like a lot. But if there was a statistic for that, I'd be fucking rolling up at first place. You better believe I'd be waving down at them. No, I was kidding. But like I would be better than last.
All right, Cotilli, your wish is my command. If we actually graph how many correct guesses you have as Vigilante, where you take matters into your own hands in the meeting, you're actually coming up near the top of the lobby. Second, we're 0.33 correct guesses as Vigilante per game. That's really impressive. The only person that's better than that is Koji. And, you know, as someone that edits for his YouTube channel, I can tell you he has been cracked as Vigilante this year. So many good highlights that you got to check out. But you also notice the people that have a lot of misses as Vigilante are the same people that actually have a lot of misses as the Sheriff as well. There's a huge correlation there. What about the number of tasks you do on average as crewmate? Because that's the aim of the game, at least in the base version, to finish the task. So who actually takes it seriously? Well, no other than Miss Snitch herself, Janet. She averages 6.7 completed tasks per game. This is including a lot of games that finish very early. So she really focuses on getting her tasks done. Whereas on the other end of the spectrum, to no one's surprise, we have DK, Mr. Refuses to do his tasks, with 2.2 average number of tasks per game as a crewmate. Steve, 3.2, and then Dumdog, who I think likes to play the game more from voting people out, deducing the killer, doing interesting things. So he doesn't do his tasks that often as well, nor does Junk. Speaking of Dumdog, he really flips the switch if he is ever the Snitch or the Phantom, and his role needs him to finish the task. He is probably still the fastest out of everyone in the lobby to complete all his tasks. He averages 7.7 tasks done whenever he's the Snitch or the Phantom, whereas the people that struggle include Kimmy and Baycon. Steve actually is middle of the pack with 5.3 tasks done as a Snitch and Phantom, which is fair game. At least he's trying in the roles that really need him to complete the tasks, as is DK. You know, when tasks are important, he actually does them a lot. What about average reports per game? Who's the most likely to find bodies and report them? Well, S Major does a lot. Again, maybe a sample size thing there. DK, Dumdog, Hafu, 5UP, Steve, Koji. Interestingly enough, I'm starting to look at the people that don't report as many bodies. So that's Scarge, Ampharos, Bomb, Cortilli, Platty, Kara, Junk. And I'm starting to remember those are the people that are more likely to die per game. So I think there's obviously an inverse correlation, or basically the more you die, the less likely you are to have the chance to report a body. But it's an interesting graph nonetheless. What about buttons per game? Who tends to hit the emergency button the most? Well, it's Hafu, Dumdog, which often is for, let's say, legit reasons, trying to help the crew out, whereas DK probably does it for more nefarious reasons a lot. And then you have 5UP, S Major, and Steve, who also enjoy buttoning, whereas everyone else really have an aversion to using the button. So there's an interesting question posed: who gets voted out when they crew the most? And likewise, I think there's also the question: who, when they are crew, vote out other crew or the jester the most? So here is an interesting graph, and we can see that Baycon is the scapegoat. You know, if you're an imposter, just like vote out Baycon. Everyone will be happy. This is 11.8% of all the crew games that Baycon has played. He has been voted out. That's the ending. You know, he might die 88% of the other times, but 11.8% of the time, he ends the game as being the crewmate that gets voted out. Cortilli is actually voted out as crew a lot as well. So is Junk. I guess that's the perpetual sus. And then you have Kimmy and then DK. Those people all make sense. Ampharos and Steve make sense. And then Hafu gets voted out as crew 5.2% of the time. So when people say Hafu can't be pushed out, well, she sort of can. Koji, Mr. Koji, the jester himself, gets voted out pretty much middle of the pack. And then you see people that are really hard to vote out. That includes Dumdog at 3.4%. 5UP this year refuses to get voted out as crew with a 2.7%. But the hardest person to vote out as crew this year is Kara at 1.1%. What about people voting wrong as crew? So these people were alive, key point alive, and then the crew voted someone out, like another crewmate out, or they voted out an exi target or the jester. So the people who I guess are most irresponsible with their votes would be Scarge and her bomb. And even Hafu tends to vote out other crew a lot, interestingly enough. So does Ampharos. And the people who are least likely to make those mistakes, Steve is actually pretty cracked on like final threes, final fives, this year. Kara doesn't make many mistakes either. 5-up is very solid, as is Platty and S Major. So piecing this together, who actually wins the most this crew? In 19th place is Scarge with a 42.41% crewmate win rate, about 6% below average. Next we have Anfrost, who although is pretty good in the killer categories, struggles a little bit when he's crewmate. Next in 17th we have Kimmy, who actually does her tasks. I think this is because she doesn't stream, so why not do a task per game? But gets voted out a lot and also votes wrong a lot. In 16th we have Baycon with a 44.29% crewmate win rate. He does his tasks every game, which is good, but again, votes wrong a lot and gets voted out the most out of everyone in the lobby when he's crew. So Junk, although he's made great improvements in his imposter gameplay this year, his crewmate gameplay has struggled a little bit with a 44.83% crew win rate. A lot of that probably is due to the fact that he gets voted out as a crewmate 7% of all the crew games he plays. Next we have Ifa, who is a fantastic neutral killer and imposter, but struggles a little bit more when he's crew. That being said, he actually does an above average number of tasks per game, and he doesn't vote wrong or gets voted out a lot, so I'm not sure why he's struggling a bit. Next we have Kara, who although has a 46% crew win rate, actually does a lot of her tasks. She doesn't vote wrong often at all, and she's the hardest crewmate to get voted out in the lobby, only 1.1% of the time. Steve somehow maintains a fairly respectable 47.5% crew win rate. He doesn't do many tasks per game, but he doesn't vote wrong that often either. He does get voted out himself as crew a lot though. Next you have Dumdog. This is a bit of a surprise to me because I think he understands what's going on a lot of the time. Like if you watch his streams, I think he figures it out a lot, but somehow that doesn't really translate fully to crew wins. He also doesn't do many tasks when he's not the Snitch or the Phantom, but he rarely gets voted out as crew, and he votes correctly a lot, but that's just not reflecting in his overall crew win rates for some reason.
I just want to play the game and have a good time, and I don't want to piss anybody off. I don't want to play dirty. I want to have a good time. I don't play very sweaty typically, but I could play sweaty if I wanted to, but mostly because I joined that lobby and I wanted to make friends. And you know what doesn't make friends and what doesn't get invited back? Voting out the lobby leaders that will invite you back. Yeah, and being an asshole and being merciless and not losing. If I went in there and won every game, I don't think I would make very many friends. I wasn't even trying. Oh, au contraire. I was trying in a different way. I was trying to make friends. But also still play the game as best as I could, but also not take it very seriously. And for some reason, none of them trusted me, but they didn't know me. But like, I think Junkyard made them think I was like this OP Among Us player. So like, I did have a lot going against me to begin with.
Next we have Platty, who's doing above average. A welcome addition to the morning lobbies these days. Doesn't do as many tasks, also plays off stream, but he still votes correctly a lot and doesn't get voted out as crew a lot. Contrary to what Steve suggests, Habom's actually a very solid crewmate who knows what's going on most of the time. He votes wrong a fair bit, but he's very hard to vote out as a crewmate because I think he comes across as very crew in his crew games. And he also does his fair share of tasks. What's there to say about Oberly? She gets the job done. Very professional. DK is actually a very solid crewmate, all things considered. He doesn't do many tasks, but he doesn't vote wrong that often either, below average. That being said, he also has moments where he's like, just vote me out, you know? So he gets voted out as crew more than his fair share, but he has an above average crew win rate, so it's obviously working for him. Koji has really stepped up his game this year. He has really good Among Us content, and a lot of it are his cracked crew games. He has a really above average crew win rate. He doesn't do that many tasks, but he votes correctly a lot as well. So good on him. 5UP has done really well as crew this year, much better than previous years where I think they were more likely to vote him out as crew. This year, only 2.7% of his crew games have resulted in him being voted out. He also doesn't vote wrong that often. He's one of the least likely to actually lose against jesters, and I think he actually handicaps himself by refusing to check certain admin or vitals that often. So it definitely could be a lot higher if he was trying as much as he was in, for example, the Stellar lobbies. Although, as a side note, I really think they should implement better polis and put vitals in medbay, so that way we don't need to, handcuff ourselves by the way we play. But alas, not the point. 5UP is a good crewmate. Hafu, the person that came first in imposter wins and neutral killers, is human after all. She's only third best crew in the lobby, and part of that is because she's probably not trying as hard in the crew roles as the other roles, at least. I definitely think she lets a few things slide when she's crew, whereas when she's a killer, I think she fights a lot harder. But still very respectable, 52.35% crew win rate. Scott is probably one of the hardest to argue against people in the lobby. Like, if he catches you being sus, he just, tunnels straight into it, and he pushes you hard like a real prosecutor. So to no one's surprise, he's second in all crew wins in the lobby. He also does a lot of tasks, and he hardly ever gets voted out. So very impressive, Scott. So who does that mean is the most crew AF in the lobby? Well, it's no other than Janet. So even though her imposter win rate isn't as sky high as it has been in the last couple of years, she's maintained her crew win rate. She, I guess, pays more attention when she's crewmate. I don't quite understand it, but she definitely hammers in the tasks, most tasks done per game. She votes wrong very seldomly and rarely gets voted out. So very impressive for Janet. Once again, showing that she is the most crew AF in the lobby. So here's the crew win rate of 2024. And you see Janet being number 1. And the only surprising thing I would say is DK being in the top 6. He's definitely done a lot better than in previous years. So good on him. I'm glad he's enjoying the game a lot. He's doing well at uni, and he's doing well at crew as well. And then good on Koji for being very solid crew as well. Doesn't come up quite nicely here, but here's a graph of basically crew win rate versus the percentage time a player voted wrong. For example, they voted out an exit target, a jester, or another crewmate. So you can see that the more often you vote incorrectly, the worse your crew win rate will be. And that makes sense. Likewise, if you're a crewmate and you have a high tendency to be voted out like Baycon, you'll find that your crewmate win rate suffers as well. So there is an understandable negative correlation between the time that you get voted out as a crewmate. If that happens more often, then you're more likely to have a crappier crew win rate. How am I that into stats? Normally I'm not, but because of baseball, and I've gotten really into baseball this year, I've come to love stats. As a side note, I'm a huge Dodgers fan. I've really gotten into it since Shohei Ohtani signed with them. So if you've made it to this video so far, comment Shohei or baseball or Dodgers so I know that you've watched it to here. But here are the overall win rates of Among Us players, and you can see that Hafu is still topping the lobby at 43.48%. So even though it's called the morning lobby, it's probably still the Hafu lobby at heart. Friendly reminder that they're playing for content, of course. They're not playing to win. This isn't like TFT or a competitive game, but the stats, take it with a grain of salt, and it's just for fun. If you've watched this far, thank you so much for supporting us on this channel. And I also want to shout out Lisa and Emanuel for helping me so much on Discord. They've spent hours compiling the stats, making those special sheriff shot stats. Emanuel helping out with all the graphs and the filtering and the data collection. They have been invaluable to making this video. Make sure you thank them in the comments as well. And also leave your biggest takeaway. I'm not sure, this might be the last morning stats video. So let me know what your thoughts are on these stats, and we'll catch up next time.